Hello, folks. Bonjour, folks. Welcome to this episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. To honor our guest today, Lucas Martinez. I told them I do it Canadian Prime Minister style, where you do it both French and English. But Lucas, our guest, is the co-founder and co-CEO of Talentcom. Lucas, what's happening today?
Bonjour, hi Anthony, as we say in Montreal. So very happy to be here today. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. So Talent.com, founded in Montreal. So for those of you that have been listening for a while, I'm on the West Coast, Montreal, somewhere in the middle. And it's an amazing success story that you might not have heard of. So Lucas, you want to tell our listeners a little bit about Talent.com, its origins, and then what your journey has been, just briefly in that.
Yeah, sure. So Talent.com is actually a story of three friends. We we've started in Montreal. One is from Montreal. The other two, including myself and Max, we are from Geneva in Switzerland, where we started together. We all ended up pretty much living in different places all around the world. Ben, who was already in Montreal, Max in London, me in Dubai, decided to join forces and start a company. We were 27 at the time. Ben had the original idea in Montreal, so we decided to move in Montreal. The story goes that it was better to start in North America in a company, like a job site, because innovation started in the US and is in the US in our space. But the reality is that he had a partner, and Maxime and I didn't. So at the time, so that's why we moved to Montreal. And so from there, like three guys that were not from the industry and that started to learn. That was a tough one, right? So we were very close to go bankrupt. We managed to raise money after year one. We changed the business model like countless of times in 12 months, mostly selling in Quebec at first. I was the regional sales guy there. And at some point we managed to find product market fit, managed to sell. And this is when it started to grow. At the same time, we really managed to raise some funds. We raised a round of $1.2 million Canadian money. As we like to call them, Canadian pesos, and from that moment on, like this was like we really started to grow. And today we are one of the largest job sites in the planet. It's around 2 people per minute that find a job on our platform around the world in 79 countries, and in 22 languages. Now we have around 500 people working in the company. And from pretty much all around. So we have our headquarters in Montreal with offices in Colombia and Medellin, where we have many of our engineers, in the US in Chicago, European headquarters in Lausanne in Switzerland. And we have different offices, sales offices, as well as a new office in Barcelona as well for product engineering.
Perfect. And that's where you are today?
That's where I am today. Exactly. I've been here for a year now, opening a new office, traveling a lot in this new world, still heading back to the US and Canada every single month.
That's awesome. Well, it's so cool to hear about the success. And it's neat to see like just a leader like you, not only being Canadian or Swiss technically, but, calling from Barcelona. I really want to be able to provide that global perspective on business, because I think culturally there are, of course, a lot of differences, but there's a lot of similarities. It's, as we get into it. So, I mean, maybe my first question is, as a CEO of a growing company who might not have expected at 27 that you were going to get to where you are, although you have a killer domain name, what's it been like growing a global company in all of those various areas in such an interesting and evolving space?
Yeah, so I think that the luck that we had from day one is that this is not a one player takes it all type of industry. And that was our luck, because the reality is that we didn't know much, like at first, when we first started, like we were just like very excited, but probably very stupid as well. We didn't know very much what we were doing. We made a lot of mistakes, but we had so much passion and so much grit that we didn't have ego. So we changed our model until it worked. So I would say that first year was really the toughest, because we didn't know if we were going to, just be there a year down the road. And then once we reached that moment where we knew that this was going to go somewhere, we really enjoyed our ride. From that moment on, it was like, okay, let's make sure that we don't have to go back and look for jobs. We raised money, and we've been profitable ever since, right? That was the goal. And so we did that for kind of 8 years this way, like growing at 50% per year. So we started with like 50,000, 250, then 500, and 1 million, and 2, and it starts to compound, right? It starts to grow a lot faster. And at some point, the original business angels wanted to see the color of their money. And so we ran a process. And at that moment, we didn't really realize it. We thought we were this cool startup, and I'm sure we are. And I have to say that we are. But we were a family-owned company. Like we have 3 very close friends. So there was not. I don't think we were that professional. If you think about like the revenues that we were generating already, and the number of people that we had. And so when we went through that process, we used an investment bank. It was the first time we actually talked to an investment bank in 8 years. And we raised money from institutional, investors. And so we brought in the Caisse de dépôt du Québec, so the Quebec pension fund, who's been great and who helped us really professionalize the company. But the reality is that they even told us, guys, like there's so many things that need to evolve. You have an amazing team, an amazing product, but we're here to help. And so I think this is really when we realized that a lot of things needed to evolve in the right sense of the term for us to keep growing.
Oh, I love that. It's interesting. So for us as a professional services firm that facilitates strategic planning, a lot of the work that we do is not only the planning and that alignment, but getting people that have no business experience to be able to evolve as a team. And what I find interesting also being a Canadian company is the difference in the marketplace. And I don't want to call it the sophistication, but le Canada, c'est petit comparé to the rest of the world. Like, the US has so many great examples, whereas, there are relatively fewer success stories coming from Montreal versus, a Silicon Valley or like Northeast US. So what was your experience going through that sophistication, being a company from Montreal? Were there any, what was the unique experience, if any?
Yeah, I think that when we talk about scaling here and really going for the US and really growing, from day one, we knew what we wanted to be. And we saw other companies around us that were more like thinking about growing Quebec and then thinking about growing Canada. From day one, we saw the world as our playground. We were from different places. We didn't have much work experience. We probably worked like 2 years before starting the company, or 3 years. But we knew that we wanted to go, big, like straight. And so what happened is that the way we created Talentcom, Nouveau at the time, and we changed our name, and luckily, and so we created an indexing machine that scraped every single job in every single career site in 79 countries. So our promise to candidates was to find every single job in every single economy. And so when we started doing this, we straight away thought about going global, but we didn't invest equally in all those markets. We started selling only in Quebec first, and then in Canada, because we didn't want to go in markets where the go-to-market strategy would be too expensive, like the user acquisition and then having salespeople and understanding the market. So we first started with Quebec and then Canada. And we refused to actually go to the US. And so many investors already at the time were like, why don't you go to the US? And the reality is that we were not ready, because the cost of a mistake in the US, if you don't know what you're doing, is way more expensive. Whereas if you do that same mistake in Canada, it's going to be 10 times cheaper. And so Canada in our space, and I think in many spaces, you compete with the best because Americans are right there next to you. But you are able to, to see and feed from them, and at the same time just compete in your own little backyard. And so once we understood how to really scale and how to make money in the US and how to grow a user base in the US, this is really when we decided, okay, now we're ready, let's go. And it was in 2016, so 6 years after we debuted. And we tripled our revenues. We went from 7, I remember still, we went from 7 to 27 million in 1 year, just because we opened the US, but because we knew what we could do. And then it really allowed us to really scale around the world, because that's what you got to do, is like, once you open the US and once you nail the US, the rest of the world becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like how you guys thought through that strategy. Not only, and I do see a lot of companies, they say, hey, like, what's the upside? But I really appreciate how you considered the potential downside and say, hey, if we're going to do this, we got to do this right. And that you were able to take advantage of that, that scalability within there. The other thing I have found is cool was just your promise, your mission, and say, hey, we're clear on what we want to deliver. Let's make sure that we can do that right. And let's make sure we do it for that, the people that we promise it to. So that's really cool. So shifting gears a little bit, when we spoke before the call, you said, hey, I'm a co-CEO with a couple other people. What's the experience been of being a co-CEO, and what are some of the challenges that you've experienced through that tremendous growth as a CEO or as a co-CEO?
Yeah. So I think, there's tons of I guess, experiments and also knowledge now after the years, and we're still learning by running a company. 3 of us running a company, right? And the bigger it gets, the harder it gets, right? And it's easier when you're small because you're always together and you're always talking to each other. So there is by default a lot of alignment. And when you grow, it starts to be a bit more difficult because, like, obviously you have your expertise. One is taking care of one area, the other one another, the other one on another, and you start talking to more people, and obviously you start talking a bit less within each other, and the alignment becomes a bit more complex. You add an SMT now as well, executive leaders, them reporting to 3 people makes things a bit more complex as well. So there are complexities, like being 3 while growing, and probably at some point we will decide on a professional CEO that will come in, and help us through that, and we'll take care of our own, I would say verticals where we have superpowers. One would be like sales, the other one is innovation. I'm more on the strategy front, and I think this is where we're gonna grow maybe in the future. But the reality is, so far, it really served us well, and for several reasons. The first one, I think, is when you're small, I think 3 co-CEOs is better than 2, because there is always a tiebreaker. And so that really changes it, because when 2 are angry, the other one is always here and can come and say, hey guys, I think that this thing makes more sense, this is more important. And this is the first thing. And the second thing is that in order for you to be able to have 3 co-CEOs, or any company, to do that, you need to talk things through. I mean, you cannot leave like any problem and here and at night. You need, before we go to bed, we make sure that every single problem is solved, and we talk it through, and sometimes we scream at each other, and it's completely normal. Obviously, over the time, it's probably not good if employees see you do that, because not every employees know you well and know what you do every single day. So obviously, I think that we stopped doing that at the office, and now we do this on the phone in a small room. But I think that just talking through things is extremely important. And then trust that we're the best at what we do in our superpowers capabilities. Like this is something that we talk a lot with each other, and that has served us pretty well.
That's awesome. What for you specifically was maybe a humbling experience or a learning experience as you've gone on this journey of growth in your role? What were you like, ooh, that was a lesson that I'm going to take with me and really, I don't want to say like reflects, but that is now actively part of your decision making or your thinking as it relates to your role and your work?
Cool. I wouldn't even know where to start. So many, like every single day, I think there is a humbling experience. Obviously, now we just went through a round of financing, and you see like what we raised, and we raised like 120 plus 30 in debt, so $150 million, and that was great. And this is what you see, right, when you hear about Talent.com, or when you go check about Talent.com. But the reality is that, like you have refusals, difficult meetings, like people questioning what you do, and everything pretty much of what you do, and this is hard, right? So I think it's you should always stay humble, because the reality is that for one, yes, you got a lot of no's, right? And the same I'm from sales, so basically rejection is what we get every single day in the sales world, right? So this is the other, and I think that we are in an industry where it's still pretty broken. Like the job search in general still hasn't seen that breakthrough. It's going to happen in the next 10 years. We're going to see a massive change in our industry, but it hasn't happened. So you have a lot of people that are not happy with the way the job search is going, being on the candidate side or sometimes on the employer side as well, right? And I think this is it's a very strong reminder that we need to stay extremely focused all the time and make sure that we work on the right things. So I think, again, like there is not a single day that we're not reminded that we're not amazing, and that we need to keep our head down and keep working hard to become better.
Yeah, it's one of the things I took away from that is, as a group of 3 friends, what you say, I only need to make sure my 2 other friends are happy and that we're working through the thing. Now with 500 employees that you have that responsibility for, and then, 150 million in Series B, there's a lot more demands. And I know as a CEO who likes his autonomy, it's kind of challenging when you have to report to other people and that you're accountable to other people. But at the same time, what I hear from what you're saying is, it's not about the company. As in, if it was just about the company, you would not have grown to this level. You're really, truly committed to the people that you're serving, both job seekers and employers. And that's, I believe that's what takes you through that toughness, despite the challenges and, the stuff that we don't see on a podcast or in a press release. So,
yeah, 100%. And what you don't see as well is how, as founders, we have to evolve, we used to be extremely operational. Like we needed to be, our leadership style was extremely close to people, and we need to, like guide, and because we were always profitable. So we need to hire, more junior people. And so we needed to train them. And so we were extremely close and operational. And then you start hiring more mid management people, and now senior management. And when you talk to senior management, sometimes you feel like, okay, these people are way better than I am in so many subjects. And so I feel like we talk a lot less. I feel like we have to listen a lot more, supposed to, and ask more questions. It's a different ball game, and it's less operational. It's sometimes a bit scary. So again, maybe not, I would say, humbling, but definitely, humbling in the sense that we're not the best at what we do in everything we do, and that we have to listen. And that's the nature of the job is definitely changing.
Yeah. Well, when I again heard when you mentioned superpowers earlier, you're keenly aware of your gaps, and you're also very aware where your strengths can play the biggest part. And so it'll be very cool to see how the next evolution of Talent.com goes and how you fit within that. So last question before we finish. You had mentioned the talent marketplace evolving over the next 10 years without giving up too much of your secret sauce. What do you see for Talent.com within that space? And then what do you see for the space in general? And then we'll call it a day.
Well, on our end today, we want to become one of the largest job sites on the planet. We want to become Pepsi's to Coke. And we've were the 100th largest site in like just 5 years ago, and today we're in the top 3. And so we want to be up there with the large players, and we have everything we need to get there. Now, the industry is changing, and for the better, because the reason why it's broken is because job boards do not control most of the application process. Everything has to go through ATSs, so application tracking systems on career side directly, and job boards don't have that much information sometimes on candidates. And so what's going to happen in the next few years is that job boards are going to be able to control a lot more of this process, and so they're going to know a lot more about candidates. And so the marketplace is going to slowly being solved as it was with travel, as it was with with real estate and others. And I think that this is going to change a lot, and users are going to be able to see jobs that they're really looking for and that they want to apply to. And the other thing that's going to happen is that we're going to be able to control more of the process. So users are going to be able to have more direct feedback from employers. They're going to be able to also know the jobs that are going to be a bit automated in the future, the jobs that they should not be applying for, the jobs that the economy is needing, the ones that pay more. There's going to be more of an educational aspect in the job search, and a directional aspect also for users. And let's not forget the job search is very aspirational. And so this is where I think job boards have a lot of say to create an amazing experience. And as far as the industry per se, well, the industry is merging. So we're going to start, today we start seeing you have placement agencies and staffing agencies mostly, and you have the job boards, right? The different job boards all around, and those two are going to merge in the next few years. And this means that job boards are going to start being able not only to have job boards, but also to control the entire payroll process from job search to payroll. And again, this is gonna empower job boards to enter new industries, and it's gonna solve the industry for good. So very excited about our vertical.
I can see how that would inspire a lot of interest in growth in the company. So that's very cool. I look forward to staying on top of it. Where can people learn more about Talent.com? Probably at Talent.com, but where can they connect with you, and where can they learn more?
Yeah, sure. So easy to connect with me at Lucas at Talent.com, and obviously Talent.com is the best place to look for jobs. So that's the place to look.
Awesome. Lucas, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure. Again, I am so happy to be able to celebrate a Canadian success story, of course, a global success story. And I just really appreciate your authenticity, your transparency, and your insight and foresight into the future of the talent market, because I think that that's something that people are, it's top of mind now, and it will continue to be top of mind for the years to come. So thanks for being here.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Anthony. A pleasure being with you today.
Likewise. So folks, my guest today, Lucas Martinez, who's the co-founder and co-CEO of Talent.com. As you know, I'm sure if you're a senior leader, talent, people development, and everything HR is probably high on your priority list. So your ability to manage that, to grow and develop in that is going to be critical. So check out Talent.com, check out Lucas, learn more about the space so that you can better serve your people. And of course, keep subscribing to the podcast so you can better learn more about how to serve and lead your people. My name is Anthony Taylor. This has been the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. I appreciate you. I hope you're having an awesome day. I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.